There was a man who, by day, was a diligent PhD student, but as night fell, he transformed into a predator, roaming the dark to hunt for his victims. Over the span of 2 years, he assaulted 206 men, shocking both the UK and the world. The perpetrator went down in history as Britain's most prolific sexual offender. So, what exactly happened? Manchester, located in the northwest of England, is a metropolitan borough within Greater Manchester County. It boasts a rich history as the world's first industrialized city, and is currently the second most bustling city in the UK, right after London. At the heart of Manchester lies Princess Street, surrounded by the famous Chinatown, a variety of bars and clubs, and a number of universities. As night descends, students flock to this area to unwind and connect, making it a hub of vibrant nightlife. The story we're diving into today unfolded right here. On the morning of June 2nd, 2017, at around 6 a.m., 18-year-old amateur rugby league player Jerry was jolted awake by a sharp pain in his body. As he regained consciousness, he found himself face down on a bed with his pants pulled down below his knees and a man sitting on top of him. Jerry immediately rolled off the bed and looked around, realizing he was in a stranger's room with a naked man standing right in front of him. At that moment, not only was he in excruciating pain from behind, but his head throbbed as well. After 2.7 seconds of processing, it hit him. He had been assaulted by this man, and anger overwhelmed him. As a rugby player, Jerry was big, tall, and strong. The man who assaulted him, on the other hand, was small and skinny, no match for Jerry. He was beaten black and blue, lying motionless on the floor. Jerry called the police immediately. When they arrived, they found a battered, small-framed man lying still on the ground and Jerry, who had no visible to the officers. It seemed obvious that the injured person on the floor was the victim, so they arrested Jerry on suspicion of causing serious bodily harm. The bloodied, slender man was sent to the nearby Manchester Royal Infirmary for medical attention. Despite Jerry's desperate explanations that he was the actual victim, the officers only believed what their eyes were telling them. Although we know this was a misunderstanding, at the time, Jerry was taken to the station as a suspect for questioning. Meanwhile, the injured man in the hospital acted very strangely when he regained consciousness. He refused to cooperate with the police and resisted giving them access to his phone. But under pressure from the authorities, his phone was unlocked. Then, he snatched it back from the officers in a panic. It was clear he was hiding something. And sure enough, when the police seized the phone again, they discovered disturbing videos, all showing him assaulting others, his victims all unconscious men. At that moment, the officers realized that Jerry truly was a victim, and the small-framed, battered man was actually the criminal. The man who assaulted Jerry was Reynhard Sinaga, born in 1983 on Sumatra Island in Indonesia. He came from a very wealthy family. His father was a successful businessman who owned a private bank. So, Reynhard had been living a life of luxury from a young age. But instead of just riding on his family's wealth, he was also quite dedicated to his studies. In 2006, Reynhard graduated from the University of Indonesia with a bachelor's degree in architecture and then decided to pursue further studies abroad. In August 2007, he arrived in the UK and enrolled at the University of Manchester, quickly earning a master's degree in urban planning. By 2011, he had also obtained a master's in sociology. It's unclear whether Reynhard was avoiding entering the workforce or truly had a passion for learning, but in August 2012, he began pursuing a PhD at the University of Leeds. For years later, however, he was still working on his first dissertation when he was arrested by the police. At the time, he was in the middle of writing his doctoral thesis. During his time as a student, Reynhard lived quite the lavish life in the UK, thanks to financial support from his father. But could someone with such a distinguished background, a polite demeanor, and a diligent academic record really be a criminal? The police investigation revealed a staggering truth. Reynhard's crimes were so extreme that they shocked not only the UK but the entire world. Crimes of this nature, in their absurdity and severity, are incredibly rare. The police searched Reynhard's rented apartment on Princess Street, surrounded by lively bars, clubs, and close to Manchester's gay village. Likely a deliberate choice on his part, as Reynhard was openly gay. Inside, the police discovered a range of alcoholic beverages, a variety of illicit date-rape drugs, recording equipment, and devices for storing videos. Combined with the footage found on Reynhard's phone, the number of victims appeared to be over 100. More disturbingly, every single victim in the videos was male, not a single woman. At that point, what puzzled the police most was why, apart from Jerry, no one else had reported the assaults. Was there something more to the story? After a thorough review of the videos, the police confirmed that there were 206 male victims featured, but they could only identify 136 of them. The remaining 70 were unrecognizable. The police then set out to contact these victims to collect evidence. Given the extended time frame involved, some of the footage indicated that Reynhard's offenses dated back to at least 2015, if not earlier. Many of the individuals in the videos had long since left the area, making the investigation and evidence gathering a difficult process. Investigators had to travel across the UK and beyond, working to reach victims scattered around the world. It was a massive undertaking, requiring extensive time and resources. Most of the victims had no idea they had ever been assaulted until the police contacted them. Many had woken up in Reynhard's apartment, thinking they had simply had too much to drink and that he had kindly taken them in for the night. Others, due to personal or family reasons, preferred not to be involved in the case and chose not to cooperate with the police, a decision that the authorities fully respected. In the end, 48 victims agreed to take Reynhard to court. In the courtroom, Reynhard remained eerily calm and showed no remorse. He even smiled as he faced the charges, adamantly denying any wrongdoing. He claimed that every one of the men he was with had consented to the encounters, saying, "They were all playing bedroom games with me. They willingly drank beforehand to get in the mood, and those so-called victims were just pretending to be asleep. Sure, they looked motionless in the videos, but in reality, they were enjoying it." Reynhard's stories became more and more outlandish. At one point, he claimed that all 48 men who testified against him had proposed to him in his apartment. The judge, of course, didn't buy this absurd defense. To expose Reynhard's lies, the police had to present the footage he had filmed. In court, the victims watched clips of their own assaults, an uncomfortable and humiliating scene. From the videos, many victims were clearly heard snoring, which was an obvious contradiction to Reynhard's claim that they were pretending to be asleep. Among the 48 victims, the earliest to be assaulted was Tony. On New Year's Day 2015, Tony, who was 22 at the time, got drunk at a club. When he woke up, he found himself in Reynhard's apartment. He felt unwell, and his body was covered in vomit. Not suspecting anything out of the ordinary, he even thanked Reynhard for his hospitality. Reynhard would often boast about his exploits on social media, writing things like, "Manchester is a magical city, a city of gay romance. Just one sip of my secret poison will make you fall in love." In January 2015, Reynhard assaulted a 19-year-old man who had had a fight with his girlfriend. Finding himself alone, the man became an easy target for Reynhard. Afterward, Reynhard bragged to his friends, claiming to be a savior who had rescued the man from his terrible girlfriend. On one weekend in September 2016, Reynhard assaulted two men within a 24-hour span. One of them was Jack, a 19-year-old. After drinking too much, Jack left a taxi and encountered Reynhard, who took him back to his apartment. When Jack woke up naked the next day, Reynhard explained that he had undressed him because he was sick. Reynhard even suggested that they engage in some intimate interaction, but Jack refused. To protect the privacy of the victims, the UK authorities gave all of them pseudonyms, held for separate trials, and prohibited any media coverage. However, one victim chose to waive his right to anonymity. Daniel, the first to do so, He shared that in 2015, he went out drinking to celebrate his birthday with friends. After the gathering, he was trying to get a taxi home when he felt an urgent need to urinate. He stepped into an alley beside a bar, and then his memory went blank. The next day, he woke up in Reynhard's apartment with a throbbing head, completely unaware of what had transpired. Thinking he had simply blacked out from drinking too much, Daniel didn't report anything to the police. It wasn't until 2017, when the police contacted him and showed him footage of his assault, that he finally understood what had happened. Daniel's experience mirrored that of most victims. They assumed their symptoms were just hangovers, as a day of heavy drinking often leads to headaches. Any soreness they felt the next day was overshadowed by the effects of alcohol, leading them to overlook any signs of assault. Through the victims' testimonies and surveillance footage, the police were able to piece together the true pattern of Reynhard's crimes. Reynhard would typically head out after midnight. Since his apartment was just a few minutes' walk from the bar street, his hunting grounds were practically right at his doorstep. Sometimes, he didn't even need to go far, as potential targets would be right outside his apartment building. Surveillance footage once showed him bringing someone back home just 1 minute after stepping out of his door. Reynhard specifically targeted lone men. If someone was passed out in an alley or by the roadside, he'd simply carry them home. If the target had been drinking but was still on their feet, Reynhard would approach them, try to get friendly, and suggest they go somewhere else to have another drink or sober up a bit. More often than not, it worked. Once someone followed Reynhard to his apartment, leaving unharmed became almost impossible. He would offer a drink that was spiked with drugs, and once his victim consumed it, they'd quickly lose consciousness. To be absolutely sure they were out, Reynhard would repeatedly test to see if they were truly unconscious before doing anything further. He'd then record the entire assault on camera. The following day, Reynhard would tell his victim, "You drank too much and passed out on the street, so I brought you back here." Most victims, thinking they had just been saved from a drunken mishap, would thank him and leave, not suspecting anything more sinister had occurred. He carried on with this pattern for 2 years. Interestingly, in April 2017, a man had reported to the police that he woke up in an Asian man's apartment feeling extremely dizzy, but then left the apartment without incident. 2 days later, the realization struck him. He may have been assaulted. He immediately went to the police. Unfortunately, the victim couldn't remember the suspect's appearance or where he had been taken, leaving the case at a dead end. It wasn't until 18-year-old Jerry's experience that Reynhard's crimes finally came to light. Whether it was because Jerry was physically stronger or had ingested less of the sedative, he woke up midway through the assault, and that was the turning point that exposed Reynhard's heinous acts to the public. The trial against Reynhard lasted from 2018 to 2020. Despite his repeated denials of guilt, the overwhelming evidence led to his conviction on 159 sexual offenses, resulting in 88 life sentences. The judge remarked, "In my view, you are an extremely dangerous, cunning, and deceitful individual, and I sincerely hope you are never released." While the parole board technically has the authority to grant parole, the earliest opportunity for Reynhard to be considered would be 40 years into his sentence. By then, if he's even still alive, he'd be a 77-year-old man. The Crown Prosecution Service stated that Reynhard is the most prolific sexual offender in British legal history. In fact, worldwide, crimes targeting male victims on this scale are unprecedented. Reynhard single-handedly tarnished Indonesia's reputation, with many Indonesians taking to social media to express their outrage, calling him a national disgrace, and even arguing that his sentence was too lenient. They felt he deserved the death penalty. However, that was never a possibility, as the UK abolished the death penalty long ago. Throughout the entire trial process, only Reynhard's mother attended one of the hearings. She told the media that she was unaware her son was gay and that their entire family were devout Christians. She couldn't believe the accusations were real. Later, Reynhard's father publicly accepted the verdict, stating, "He deserves a sentence. I don't want to see him again or talk about this case anymore." Reynhard was indeed raised in a deeply religious Christian household, and even after moving to the UK, he continued attending church regularly. Friends frequently saw him there and described him as a kind-hearted person, finding it hard to believe he could commit such acts. It's also worth noting that his university classmates back in Indonesia recalled him as smart, cheerful, and optimistic, with a seemingly normal sexual orientation. If that's true, it means Reynhard only started identifying as gay after moving to the UK. Initially, he lived in another part of the city before eventually relocating closer to the gay village. Of course, there's another possibility. Reynhard may have always been gay, but growing up in a society like Indonesia, where such orientations weren't accepted, he never came out. When he moved to the UK, he found a more open environment and felt comfortable revealing his true sexual identity. Following this case, reports of male victims of sexual assault in the UK hit an all-time high, bringing much-needed attention to the issue. Prior to this, most public discourse around safety was aimed at women, often warning girls to avoid walking alone at night, with little thought given to the vulnerability of men. This story serves as a reminder that it's not just girls who need to be cautious. Boys should also know how to protect themselves when out and about.